The table was a battlefield, littered with half-empty wine glasses and crumpled napkins. I forced a smile, holding up the dessert I'd spent all morning baking. "Caitlin, I brought the pecan pie you like," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. Caitlin's eyes, sharp as broken glass, flicked to me. "Oh, Dorothy, always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong," she snapped, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. The room stilled. Forks paused mid-air. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. "I just thought," I started, but she cut me off, her manicured nails stabbing the air. "Thought what?" "That we can't manage without you." Her voice was a whip, cracking over the table. My son Dylan sat beside her, his gaze glued to his plate, fork scraping aimlessly. "Say something," I begged silently. He didn't. The guests, neighbors, friends, shifted uncomfortably. Margie, the kind widow from next door, leaned forward. "Caitlin, maybe that's a bit much," she murmured, but Caitlin's glare silenced her. "You think you're so indispensable," Caitlin went on, tossing her napkin onto the table like a gauntlet. "This is my house, Dorothy. Mine and Dylan's. Not yours. So stop acting like it is." My fingers tightened around the pie dish, the ceramic warm against my palms. The house smelled of burnt casserole and cheap candles, a far cry from the home I'd handed over to them. I'd scrubbed their counters, stocked their fridge, and this was my reward? "I was only trying to help," I said, my voice thinner than I wanted. "Help?" Caitlin laughed, a brittle sound. "You suffocate us. You're always here, always meddling. Get out. Just get out of my house." The words hit like a slap. The room went quiet, save for the faint hum of the air conditioner. I looked at Dylan, my boy, the one I'd raised alone after his father left. His eyes stayed down, his shoulders hunched. "Dylan," I whispered. He cleared his throat, still not looking up. "Mom, maybe you should go." My breath caught. The pie dish slipped from my hands, landing with a soft thud on the table. Margie gasped. Someone coughed. I stood, my chair scraping the floor. My hands shook as I grabbed my purse, the leather creaking under my grip. The guests' whispers followed me as I walked to the door, my heels clicking on the hardwood I'd paid for. Outside, the night air was cool, but it did nothing to soothe the fire in my chest. I fumbled with my keys, the jangle loud in the silence. The house loomed behind me, its windows glowing like judgmental eyes. I slid into my car, the door slamming harder than I meant. My phone buzzed in my purse, but I ignored it, my hands trembling as I started the engine. The dashboard lit up, casting shadows on my face. I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, pale but my eyes burned. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old emails out of habit. Then I saw it. The scanned deed, the one I'd almost forgotten. My name, Dorothy Cunningham, in bold black ink. The house was mine.
Legali, undeniably mine.
I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. Caitlin's voice echoed in my head. "Get out of my house." But it was her smug face that fueled the spark in my gut. I leaned back, the leather seat creaking, and whispered to the empty car. "This isn't over, Caitlin. Not by a long shot." The engine hummed as I pulled onto the street, the deed glowing in my mind like a loaded gun. The car's engine ticked as it cooled, parked beside the old park where Dylan used to chase fireflies. The streetlights cast long shadows over the swings, their chains creaking in the breeze. I didn't know why I'd stopped here, but my hands wouldn't turn the wheel toward home. Not yet. I dug into my purse, pulling out my wallet. A photo slipped free, Dylan at his high school graduation, his grin wide enough to break my heart. My thumb traced the worn edges and the years pulled me back. 10 years ago, I was in a bank signing my name on a check for Dylan's college tuition. "You focus on your studies, sweetheart," I told him, my pen scratching the paper. He'd hugged me, his arms strong, his voice thick. "I'll make you proud, Mom." The memory stung now, sharp as a paper cut. Another flash. 5 years ago, the realtor handing me the keys to the house. I'd worked overtime for years, saving every penny to buy it for Dylan and Caitlin. "It's perfect," Caitlin had said, her smile tight as she took the keys. But later, at the housewarming, she'd smirked over her wine glass. "Oh, Dorothy, you paid for everything again, didn't you?" Her tone was sugar-coated with venom. I'd laughed it off, but Dylan's silence even then had pricked. The wedding was worse. I'd organized it all: flowers, catering, the dress Caitlin demanded. At the reception, she'd forgotten to invite me to the family toast. "Just a mix-up," Dylan had mumbled, avoiding my eyes. I'd smiled, my jaw tight, and said nothing. But I saw it then. Caitlin's slow campaign to push me out. I snapped back to the present, my breath fogging the car window. The park was empty now, the grass patchy under the dim light. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my shoes. The air smelled of damp leaves and distant rain. I walked to the old bench where I used to read to Dylan, It's paint-chipped but solid. My fingers brushed the wood, and another memory hit. Caitlin's voice last year, sharp over the phone. "We don't need you dropping by every week, Dorothy. We're fine." "Fine," she'd said, while I cleaned their dishes and paid their late bills. Back in the car I drove home, the photo still clutched in my hand. My house was quiet, the hallway lined with boxes of old keepsakes. I dropped my purse on the counter and opened one, pulling out a stack of papers. Receipts for Dylan's tuition. A thank you note from him scrawled in boyish handwriting. A wedding invoice I'd paid without question. Each one was a brick in the wall I'd built for them, now crumbling under Caitlin's disdain. My fingers paused on a yellowed envelope. The deed to the house. I slid it out, the paper crisp despite the years. My name stared back at me, a reminder of the power I'd forgotten. Caitlin's words, "my house," burned in my mind, but this document said otherwise. I gripped it, my nails digging into the edge. The pen on the table rolled as I bumped it, and when I grabbed it, the cap snapped in my hand. The crack echoed in the silent room, matching the fury coiling in my chest. I stood, the deed still in my grip, and walked to the window. The street outside was dark, but my reflection was clear. Eyes narrowed, jaw set. "You don't get to erase me," I whispered, the words a vow to the night. The morning sun sliced through my blinds, sharp as a blade. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee gone cold, my hand steady for the first time in days. Caitlin's voice still echoed, "Get out." But it didn't shake me anymore. I dressed in a crisp blazer, grabbed my keys, and drove to my office, the deed tucked in my bag like a secret weapon. My office was a haven of order. Glass desk, neat stacks of folders, the faint hum of the coffee maker. I spread the deed out, its edges curling slightly. My name in bold ink was a lifeline. I flipped through related documents, mortgage papers, tax records, marking clauses with a red pen. Each stroke was a step toward control. My phone buzzed, shattering the quiet. Margie's name flashed on the screen. "Dorothy, you okay after last night?" Her voice was warm but edged with worry. "Can you meet me for coffee? I'm at Bean and Brew." I hesitated, glancing at the papers. "Give me 20 minutes, I said, already grabbing my coat. The cafe was a cozy chaos of clinking mugs and murmured conversations. Margie waved from a corner table, her silver hair catching the light. I slid into the seat across from her, the smell of cinnamon and espresso grounding me. "You didn't deserve that," she said, her eyes soft but fierce. Caitlin crossed a line. I stirred my coffee, the spoon clinking. "She thinks she can bully me out of their lives." Margie leaned closer, her voice low. "She's been crossing lines with everyone. The Hendersons?" She screamed at them over a noisy lawnmower. "And don't get me started on the trash she leaves out. Coyotes were sniffing around last week." She shook her head. "People are fed up." My grip tightened on the mug. "Fed up enough to back me up?" Her smile was sly. "More than you think. You're not alone, Dorothy." I pulled out a small notebook, jotting down names Margie mentioned, neighbors who'd grumbled about Caitlin's tantrums. Each one was a potential ally. A young couple at the next table bickered loudly, and I glanced over, their sharp tones reminding me of Caitlin's venom. I shook it off, focusing on Margie. "I'm not letting her win," I said, my voice low but firm. "Good," Margie said, tapping the table. "She's been acting like she owns that house. Time she learned otherwise." Back at the office, I spread my notes across the desk, the red pen still in hand. A drop of coffee had stained the deed's corner, but I didn't care. I opened my laptop, the screen's glow sharp against the dim room. My fingers flew over the keys, pulling up articles on tenant rights and property law. One headline caught my eye. "Landlord rights in Ohio, reclaiming your property." I clicked, scanning the text. A clause about lease violations sparked an idea, and my pulse quickened. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and let a smile curve my lips. The office was silent, but the documents on my desk hummed with possibility. Caitlin thought she'd humiliated me, but she'd only lit the fuse. I closed the laptop, the click loud in the quiet, and whispered to the empty room. "Let's see who's evicted now." The morning was crisp, the kind that made your breath catch. I sat in my car outside Sarah's office, my notebook open on the passenger seat, a pen tucked behind my ear. Sarah, my tenant in another property, had hinted at trouble with Caitlin before. Now I needed details. I dialed her number, my thumb steady. "Sarah, it's Dorothy. Can we talk?" "Your office, noon." Her voice crackled through. "Yeah, I've got time. Come by." She sounded wary, but I didn't care. I needed ammunition. Sarah's office was a shoebox tucked above a deli, the air thick with coffee and toner. Papers spilled across her desk, and a monitor flickered with spreadsheets. She waved me to a chair, her bracelets jangling. "So what's this about Caitlin?" she asked, leaning back. I opened my notebook, pen poised. Anything you know. Problems, complaints, anything. My voice was calm but my pulse thrummed. Sarah sighed, rubbing her neck. She's a piece of work. Did you know she tried renting out your garage? No permission, no nothing. I heard it from a guy who almost took the deal. She tapped her phone, pulling up a message. Look at this. I leaned forward. The screen showed Caitlin's name, her words sharp. Send the $500 by Friday, or I'll make trouble. My jaw tightened. She's demanding money from you? Not just me, Sarah said, her voice low. Neighbors too. She's been sloppy. Trash piles in the yard, parties till 2 a.m. People are pissed. She spilled coffee on a folder, cursing softly, then met my eyes. She thinks she's untouchable. I scribbled notes, the pen scratching like a blade. Sublease violation. Neighborhood complaints. Each fact was a brick in my case. Anything else? I pressed. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. She's been dodging HOA fines. I saw the notices in her mailbox when I dropped off a package. Her voice dropped. She's scared of you, though. Hid the notices when I mentioned your name. I sat back, the chair creaking. Scared? Good. My fingers traced the notebook's edge, where I'd drawn an arrow next to sublease. Caitlin's arrogance was her weakness, and I'd use it. Thanks, Sarah, I said, standing. This helps. Back home, my dining table became a war room. I spread out notes, the deed, and a printout of Ohio tenant laws. The house was silent, save for the tick of a clock. I wrote a list titled Caitlin's weaknesses. Illegal sublease, HOA violations, neighbor complaints. My phone buzzed, Dylan's name on the screen. I let it ring, my eyes fixed on the list. He'd made his choice. The lamplight cast shadows as I underlined sublease violation in red. My chest felt tight, not with fear, but with something sharper, anticipation. Caitlin thought she'd humiliated me, but she'd only handed me the tools to unravel her. I closed the notebook, the snap loud in the quiet, and leaned back, a smile tugging at my lips. The next move was mine. And it would sting. My office was a fortress of focus, the desk clear except for my laptop and a single sheet of paper. The letter to Caitlin took shape under my fingers, each word precise, legal, unyielding. As the property owner, I demand payment of $4,500 in overdue rent due to lease violations, including unauthorized subleasing. I cross-checked every clause against Ohio law, my eyes scanning articles on my screen. The printer hummed, spitting out the final draft. I signed it, my pen steady, the ink a deep, satisfying black. At the post office, I handed the envelope to the clerk for certified mail. Make sure it's tracked, I said, my voice low. The clerk nodded, oblivious to the weight of the moment. I imagined Caitlin's face when she opened it, her smirk fading, her hands trembling. The thought fueled me. The next evening I drove past their house, my car blending into the dusk. The street was quiet, the kind of suburban hush that hid secrets. I parked a block away, my eyes locked on their front window. The curtains were half open, revealing Caitlin at the dining table, the letter in her hand. She laughed, her voice carrying faintly. She's serious? This is pathetic. She tossed the envelope onto a pile of mail, the paper crumpling. Dylan hovered nearby, his shoulders slouched. Maybe we should check it, he mumbled, but Caitlin cut him off, her hand slicing the air. It's a bluff, Dylan. She's got nothing. She poured a glass of wine, the liquid glinting under the chandelier I'd paid for. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, the leather creaking. Bluff? I'd built my life on calculated risks, not bluffs. My gaze lingered on the house, my house, its siding faded, the lawn patchy. Caitlin's carelessness was everywhere, and it would be her downfall. Back home I pulled out my calendar, its grid a map of her reckoning. The letter gave her 10 days to pay or respond. I marked the deadline with a red checkmark, my pen deliberate. The kitchen was dark, the silence heavy, but my mind raced. I opened my laptop, pulling up more legal templates, eviction notices, demand letters. Each click was a step closer. I stood, stretching, and caught my reflection in the window. My eyes were sharp, my jaw set. Caitlin's laughter echoed in my head, but it only steeled me. I returned to the calendar, my finger tracing the red mark. Your time's running out, I whispered, the words curling into the quiet like smoke. The clock ticked, each second a pulse in my plan, and I sat back down, ready for the next move. The office was dim, the lamp casting a warm glow over my desk. I reached into a filing cabinet, the metal drawer screeching, and pulled out a folder labeled First Properties. A yellowed contract slid free, its edges frayed. My signature, bold and looping, stared back from 20 years ago, the first house I'd bought after Tom died. My fingers lingered on the paper, and the past swallowed me whole. I was 35, Dylan barely 10. his sneakers scuffed from the playground. Tom's death left us with a mortgage and a pile of bills. I'd sit at our kitchen table, bills spread out like a losing hand of cards, my coffee cold. But I didn't break. I took a course on real estate, my nights spent poring over books while Dylan slept. The first deal was a gamble. A rundown duplex I bought with a loan that made the banker scoff. "You're in over your head, Mrs. Cunningham," he'd said, his tie too tight, his office smelling of polish and doubt. "Give me 6 months. I shot back, my voice steady despite the sweat on my palms. "You'll get your money." He signed the loan, his pen reluctant. The duplex was a wreck. Peeling paint, a leaky roof. I learned to wield a paint roller, my arms aching as I coated walls while Dylan did homework nearby. "Looks good, Mom," he'd say, his smile a spark in the chaos. I negotiated with contractors, haggled over pipes, and rented the units out within months. The banker got his money and I got a second property. Another flash. A meeting with a client, a gruff landlord who thought I was soft. "This place isn't ready," he barked, kicking a baseboard in my third property. I squared my shoulders, my clipboard tight in my hands. "It'll be ready in 5 days. You'll sign." He did, and I learned I could outlast anyone. Back in the present, I set the contract down, my breath deep. The office smelled of paper and resolve, the silence a canvas for my thoughts. Caitlin was just another skeptic. Another obstacle. I'd built a small empire from nothing. 6 properties, each a testament to my grit. She thought she could push me out? She didn't know who she was dealing with. I opened the folder wider, revealing a faded photo of Dylan, gap-toothed and grinning, tucked into the contract. My chest tightened, but I pushed it aside. He'd chosen Caitlin's side, but I'd fought harder battles. I recalled late nights negotiating leases, my eyes burning, my coffee bitter. I'd outsmarted men twice my size, banks that laughed me off. Caitlin was no match. I slid the contract back into the folder, the paper rustling. My hand didn't shake. The laptop glowed, waiting for my next move. More research, more plans. Caitlin's violations were my leverage, and I'd used them like I'd used every challenge before. I closed the folder, the snap sharp, and leaned back, my eyes on the ceiling. The game was on and I'd play to win. The phone buzzed on my kitchen counter, Margie's name lighting up the screen. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, the cotton rough against my skin, and answered. "Dorothy, you'll want to hear this," Margie said, her voice low like she was sharing a secret. "Caitlin's going to the neighborhood fair tomorrow. Everyone will be there." I set the towel down, my pulse quickening. "Perfect," I said, already picturing the park, the crowd, Caitlin's smug face. "Thanks, Margie." I hung up, grabbed my notebook, and jotted a single word. Opportunity. The fair was my chance to rattle her, to let her own temper dig her grave. The next day the park buzzed with life. Kids chasing balloons, the sizzle of hot dogs on grills, the sugary scent of cotton candy thick in the air. I wore a simple blouse, my hair pulled back, blending into the crowd. I chatted with neighbors, my smile easy, my words deliberate. At the bake sale table I leaned toward Helen, the fair's organizer. "Helen, you look swamped," I said, handing her a stack of napkins. "By the way, have you heard about Caitlin's unpaid bills? Must be tough for her." Helen's eyes widened, her voice a whisper. "Oh, I had no idea." I shrugged, casual, but my gaze flicked to Caitlin, who stood nearby, clutching a plastic cup of lemonade. Her head snapped toward me, her face flushing. "Dorothy!" Caitlin's voice cut through the chatter, sharp as a blade. She marched over, her heels sinking into the grass. "What's your problem?" "Spreading lies now." I tilted my head, my tone cool. "Lies? I just mentioned your rent issues. You know, the ones piling up." The crowd hushed, heads turning. A child dropped a balloon, its pop loud in the silence. Caitlin's cup shook, lemonade sloshing over the rim. "You have no right to meddle in my life," she snapped, her voice cracking. "This is none of their business." A neighbor, Mrs. Carter, muttered to her friend. "She's always so rude." Caitlin spun toward her, eyes blazing, but I stepped back, my hands clasped, letting her unravel. "Caitlin, calm down," I said, soft but pointed. "No need to make a scene." She froze, her breath hitching, then stormed off, nearly knocking over a tray of cookies. The crowd buzzed with whispers. I turned to Helen, offering a small smile. "Sorry about that. She's been under stress." Helen nodded, but her eyes said she'd heard enough. Back home I sat at my dining table, the notebook open. The lamp cast a warm glow over my notes as I wrote. Caitlin lost temper, alienated neighbors. My pen moved fast, the ink a map of her downfall. Her outburst was proof. Her arrogance was her weakness, and I'd keep pressing it. I glanced at a framed photo of the house, its white siding pristine in the sunlight. My house. Hers only in her delusions. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and whispered to the empty room. You're doing this to yourself, Caitlin. The photo seemed to stare back, its silence a promise of what was coming. The morning was gray, clouds heavy over Columbus. I walked into Tom's law office, a thick folder under my arm, the weight of it grounding me. The receptionist waved me through, and I found Tom behind his desk, surrounded by leather-bound books and the faint scent of cedar. He stood, his tie slightly crooked, and grinned. Dorothy, you look like you're ready to take on the world. I set the folder down, its thud soft but firm. Just one person, I said, sliding it toward him. Here's everything. Deed, lease violations, witness statements. Tom flipped it open, his eyebrows climbing as he scanned the pages. Subleasing without permission?
Hoa phái.
You've built a case a prosecutor would envy. He chuckled, but his eyes were sharp. You could have been a lawyer, you know. I smiled, easing into the chair. I'll settle for winning this one. My voice was steady, but my fingers tapped the armrest, eager to move. Tom outlined the eviction process, his pen circling key clauses. With this evidence, we can file a notice to vacate. If they don't comply, we go to court. You're airtight. He leaned back, his chair squeaking. Anything else I should know? I nodded, pulling out my phone. I've got more. Hang on. I dialed Margie, putting her on speaker. Margie, tell Tom what you told me. Her voice crackled through, indignant. Caitlin's been dumping trash in my yard, Tom. And those late-night parties? The whole street's fed up. She sent a photo, garbage bags spilling onto her lawn. Tom's jaw tightened. Next I called Sarah. Sarah, about the garage sublease, I prompted. She didn't hesitate. I saw the ad online, Tom. Caitlin was charging $600 a month, no lease, nothing. I've got screenshots. I glanced at Tom, his pen flying across a notepad. He hung up, shaking his head. You've got a small army here, Dorothy. These statements seal it. He tapped the folder. I'll draft the notice tomorrow. You good with that? Better than good, I said, my chest light for the first time in weeks. I stood, shaking his hand, his grip warm and sure. Thanks, Tom. Back home, I spread the folder's contents across my dining table, the papers fanning out like a winning hand. The deed sat at the center, my name a quiet vow. I checked each document, my red pen marking stray commas, my focus razor sharp. Margie's photo of the trash lay beside Sarah's screenshots, proof of Caitlin's carelessness. Tom's plan echoed in my mind. Notice, court, victory. The house was silent, the clocks tick a steady pulse. I set my pen down, its click final, and leaned back. My eyes caught the glint of my keys on the counter, a reminder of the doors I'd opened and the ones I'd close. Caitlin's time was running out, and I had the team to make it happen. My gaze settled on the table, the documents a fortress, and I knew the end was near. My phone rang as I sipped coffee, the mug warm in my hands. Margie's voice was urgent. Dorothy, Caitlin's up to something. She's been pushing Dylan to talk to you, to fix things. I heard her yelling at him last night. I set the mug down, the ceramic clinking. Fix things. My voice was calm, but my stomach twisted. Thanks for the heads up, Margie. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and headed out. I needed to see this for myself. The evening was cool, the streetlights casting long shadows. I parked a block from Caitlin's house, my car hidden by a row of oaks. Through the living room window I saw them. Caitlin pacing, her arms flailing, Dylan slouched on the couch. The TV flickered, its blue glow lighting their faces. I cracked my window, their voices faint but clear. You have to talk to her, Dylan. Caitlin's tone was venomous, her hands on her hips. Your mother's trying to ruin us. She wants us on the street. Dylan rubbed his face, his voice low. I don't know, Caitlin. Maybe we should just pay the rent she's asking for. His shoulders sagged, his fingers twisting a throw pillow. Pay. Caitlin laughed, sharp and bitter. She's bluffing. She won't kick us out. You're her son. She grabbed her phone, slamming it on the coffee table. The thud made Dylan flinch. Go to her tomorrow. Beg if you have to. She'll cave. My hands clenched the steering wheel, the leather creaking. Beg? My son reduced to a pawn in her game. I spotted a toy truck on the windowsill, one Dylan played with as a boy. The memory stung. A summer day, his laughter, my promises to always protect him. Now he sat there, spineless, letting her pull the strings. Dylan shook his head, his voice barely audible. What if she doesn't listen? She's different now. Caitlin spun toward him, her face contorted, but I couldn't hear her reply. A neighbor's dog barked, drowning her out. I drove home, the road blurring as my thoughts churned. Dylan's hesitation hurt more than I'd expected, a dull ache in my chest. But it also sharpened my resolve. Caitlin thought she could manipulate him to stop me? She'd underestimated me again. At my desk, I opened the folder Tom had prepped, the eviction notice crisp and final. I skimmed it, my eyes lingering on the deadline. 7 days to vacate. Margie's photo of the trash, Sarah's screenshots, Tom's legal clauses, they were my arsenal. I added a note about Caitlin's latest stunt, my pen digging into the paper. Dylan's face flashed in my mind, his voice trembling, but I pushed it away. The house was quiet, the silence a weight I welcomed. I closed the folder, its edges worn from my grip, and stood. My reflection in the window was sharp, unyielding. "You won't stop me, Caitlin," I said, the words a vow to the night. The folder lay on the desk, a ticking bomb, and I knew the explosion was coming. The attic door creaked as I pushed it open, dust swirling in the dim light. I was clearing space, preparing for the house's return, my victory over Caitlin nearly complete. Boxes lined the walls, their labels faded. Dylan's school, Christmas 2015. I tugged one open, the cardboard soft under my fingers, and found a child's drawing. A stick figure family, me and Dylan under a lopsided sun. My breath caught and the years pulled me back. 3 years ago, I'd planned a birthday dinner for myself, a small thing at a cafe downtown. I'd called Dylan, my voice bright. "You're coming, right? Just you and me like old times." He'd hesitated, his voice muffled. "Caitlin's not feeling great, Mom." "I'll try." I waited at the cafe, the candle on my table flickering, but he never showed. Later he texted, "Sorry, Caitlin needed me." I'd stared at the screen, my coffee cold, the waitress's pity sharp in her smile. Another memory, Christmas 2 years back. I'd brought a gift for Dylan. A leather journal, embossed with his initials. Caitlin had smirked, tossing it onto a pile of wrapping paper. "Another present, Dorothy? Don't you ever get tired?" Dylan had laughed, a nervous sound, and changed the subject. I'd kept my smile, but my hands clenched under the table, nails digging into my palms. The worst was last summer. I'd called to invite them for dinner, my voice steady despite the ache. Caitlin answered Dylan's phone, her tone syrupy. "Oh, Dorothy, he's busy. Maybe next week." The line went dead. When I drove by their house, my house, I saw them laughing on the porch, Caitlin's hand on his arm. He hadn't been busy. He'd just chosen her. Back in the attic, I pulled out a birthday card from Dylan, his boyish scrawl thanking me for a bike. My fingers tightened, the paper crinkling. Caitlin had woven her web slowly, turning my son into a stranger. The pain was a dull blade, but it sharpened my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for the house. I was fighting for the life I'd built, for the son I'd raised. I set the card down, my hands steadying. The attic smelled of old wood and memories, the silence heavy but not oppressive. I closed the box, the thud final, and walked downstairs. At my desk, the eviction notice Tom had drafted glowed in the lamplight, a promise of justice. Caitlin had taken enough, but she wouldn't take my strength. I sat, the chair creaking, and whispered to the empty room, "I'll bring you back, Dylan, but first I finish this." The documents on my desk seemed to pulse, a heartbeat of my plan, and I knew the end was close. The morning was sharp, the air biting as I stood in Tom's office, the eviction notice crisp in my hands. He checked it once more, his glasses slipping down his nose. "It's perfect, Dorothy," he said, handing it back. "You ready?" I nodded, my fingers tracing the paper's edge. The notary, a quiet woman named Ellen, waited by the door, her briefcase a silent ally. We drove to the house, my house, the familiar street now a battlefield. Neighbors lingered on their lawns, their whispers a low hum. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my boots, and approached the front door. Ellen followed, her steps measured. I knocked, the sound echoing like a gavel. Caitlin flung the door open, her hair disheveled, her eyes blazing. "What now, Dorothy?" she snapped, then froze when she saw Ellen. I held up the notice, my voice steady. "This terminates your lease. You have 30 days to vacate." Her face twisted, the paper trembling as she snatched it. "You're heartless," she screamed, her voice cracking. "This is our home. You can't do this." She turned to the neighbors, her arms wide. "See what she's doing? She's throwing us out." Margie stepped forward, her silver hair catching the sunlight. "You brought this on yourself, Caitlin," she said, her tone firm. "The trash, the noise, the lies. We're done." Other neighbors nodded, their murmurs a chorus of agreement. Caitlin's eyes darted, her breath hitching. Dylan stood in the doorway, his face pale, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "Mom," he started, but his voice faded under Caitlin's glare. I met his eyes, my heart aching, but I didn't waver. "You had your chance to speak," I said, soft but final. Caitlin threw the notice to the floor, the paper skidding across the hardwood. Ellen calmly retrieved it, her movements precise. "This is official," she said, her voice cutting through Caitlin's shouts. "Non-compliance will lead to court." Caitlin's hands shook, her face red, but her words dissolved into a furious sputter. I turned, my heels clicking as I walked to the car. Neighbors parted for me, their nods a quiet salute. Through the window, I saw a framed photo on their wall. Me and Dylan, years ago, smiling. I looked away, my jaw tight. The house was mine again, and Caitlin's reign was over. I slid into the car, the door shutting with a thud. Ellen handed me the signed receipt, her pen clicking. I started the engine, my hands steady on the wheel. The street fell away in the rearview mirror, but my eyes were fixed ahead, calm and unyielding. The keys in my pocket felt heavy, a promise kept, and I drove on. The front door swung open, the hinges groaning as I stepped into my house. The air was stale, heavy with the ghosts of Caitlin's neglect, scratched walls, a stain on the carpet, a cheap earring glinting in a corner. I kicked it aside, the clink sharp in the silence, and walked through the rooms. My rooms. The deed in my office was proof, but this moment, my footsteps echoing, was the real victory. I ran my hand along the banister. It's wood-worn but solid. In the kitchen, I found a cracked mug I'd bought years ago, abandoned in a cupboard. I set it on the counter, a small reclaiming. The windows let in soft light, dust motes dancing, and I opened one, letting the breeze sweep away the past. My notebook lay on the table, filled with repair plans, new paint, fixed floors, a fresh start. As dusk settled, the doorbell rang, a hesitant chime. I opened the door to find Dylan, his jacket rumpled, his eyes red. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, my expression guarded, and he shuffled in, his hands twisting. "I messed up," he said, staring at the floor. "I let Caitlin control me. I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry." His voice cracked, and he looked up, his eyes pleading. I crossed my arms, my voice low. "You hurt me, Dylan. You stood by while she humiliated me. I love you, but that can't happen again." My words were firm, a boundary carved in stone. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I know. I want to be better. For you, for myself." His fingers tugged at his sleeve, a nervous habit from childhood. I softened, but only slightly. "Then show it. Actions, not words." I gestured to the door, my meaning clear. "Start now." He nodded again, his shoulders straighter, and left, the door clicking shut behind him. I stepped onto the porch, a mug of tea warming my hands. The night was cool, stars sharp above the quiet street. A neighbor waved from across the road, his nod a quiet acknowledgement of my win. I sipped the tea, its bitterness fading into warmth, and pulled out my notebook. I wrote one phrase, "new beginning." The words felt right, a seed planted. The keys in my pocket pressed against my thigh, a familiar weight. I touched them, my fingers steady, and smiled. The house was mine, my dignity restored, my son on a path to redemption. The future stretched out, open and unburdened, and I leaned back against the porch rail, ready for it. If you like this story, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what impressed you the most about this story. Also, we recommend you to listen to our previous story. It is even more shocking. Just click on the box on the left to play it. Thank you for watching.